Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast of Dr. Orman's Lifecast. It is July 8th. It is seemingly 200 degrees outside, or so it feels here in Central Florida. It is a hot one, and not surprisingly, today is the topic of ice baths. You have heard undoubtedly quite a bit about it. Do ice baths work? Apparently, they are the next latest, greatest thing. And like most things, the answer is it really depends on the person. On the plus side, those who have taken ice baths have noticed a number of things, probably maybe 10, 11, 12 different things. Number one, there's been a reduced muscle soreness. The cold temperatures help to clear out the inflammation, help to alleviate a lot of the muscle damage, particularly post-exercise. So you see this a lot. I do a fair amount of running, especially long distance marathons. And so you'll see people who do marathons at 26.2-mile runs, and even those who do the really strenuous things like the ultra marathons. Those are anything greater than a marathon, but most of them are typically 50 miles or 100 miles, and they will actually bring ice along the way and soak in that for a few minutes. It also helps muscles recover quickly because it helps improve the circulation, and it essentially flushes out the waste products that the body produces. So basically the muscles help to heal quicker. It can also help to reduce the swelling, uh, not only of the joints themselves, but also the tissue that's around there, and of course flushing out the inflammation. In our medicine, in natural medicine, we look at inflammation as excess heat that is trapped. So when you add ice to something, it helps to flush that out. It is also said to improve circulation. Cold temperatures can help to stimulate blood flow, which can, of course, bring the nutrition to the joints, bring the nutrition and energy to the tissues themselves. It also is said to help improve mental wellness. There have been a couple of studies which have shown it to alleviate depression. And I will do a podcast on depression where you will learn quite a bit. And it's a lot different than what you think. Only, at least in my experience in 30 years of doing healthcare, that about 20% of depression is actually biochemical. The rest is something different, but that's for another time. It is ice baths are said to increase endurance by reducing muscle fatigue between workouts, so allows you to work out more frequently, both in terms of the number of workouts as well as the length of time between the workouts, which of course would lead to increased endurance. It also enhances immunity. Uh, Basically, what it does is elevate the natural killer T cells, which makes you less susceptible to in particular viruses. So you have a lot of benefit, and you would think, well, this is great. This sounded fantastic. You listed about 7 or 8 different things, which sounded fabulous. Why shouldn't I do it? Let me tell you a story. I decided to do a 30-day challenge in whereby I basically did an ice bath for about 15 minutes every single day for an entire month. And during this time frame, I noticed a decrease in energy. I noticed a sluggishness. My mental acuity, which is normally pretty sharp, was off. I couldn't recall. I'm learning a couple of languages, and the words just didn't come as quickly as they normally do. I noticed that my metabolism slowed down, and a couple of blood markers I wasn't really crazy about. So why would that be the case? We have this laundry list of amazing things, and yet my experience was exactly the opposite. And the short and sweet of it is ice, as well as any other therapy, is different for every person. And in my case, what I theorize happened is that the cold essentially slowed down my metabolism. Translation, thyroid. thyroid was very, very sluggish. I could tell because my voice was just a little off. My sleep patterns were horrible. I was a little sluggish during the day and then hyper at night. My appetite was larger than normal, and losing weight was very, very, very difficult. So as you can see, it's not appropriate for every person. What I have noticed as a general rule is that people who have a tendency to be super hyper, "Ah, let me tell you about that. It reminds me of if it was a state, it would be New York. You know, everything's fast in New York. People talk fast, they move fast, everything goes fast. And if a person has a tendency toward that the ice baths, the ice treatments seem to work quite well. And maybe from somebody, when we think of a little bit slower pace, I always think of maybe down south, like South Carolina or Alabama or here in Florida too, where the pace is a little bit slower, not quite as crazy fast. And so for individuals who naturally their tendency is toward that, and again, it's not a right or wrong thing, it's just an individual characteristic that has a tendency to slow down a system that already leans toward slowness. Another way of saying it is if we had a three-story house, and we'll call the middle, let's call it health, just plain old healthy, your version of healthy. And above we'll call excess, and below we'll call deficient. The top floor, the excess, and that's what I mentioned before. People who have a tendency to talk real fast, and jumping from subject to subject, and they're sweating a lot, and their face is usually red, and their hands are moving like this. Calm down a little bit. Too much energy there. Most people come from the bottom floor, so to speak, that when they are off, when their system is off, they're fatigued, they're exhausted, their memory is not quite how it's normally sharp. It's not sharp now. Difficulty losing weight. All they want to do is sleep during the day, and when it comes to sleeping at night, forget it. It's the mind is racing and racing and racing and racing and racing. There is that internal dialogue which won't shut off. It's like there's so much noise in the brain. Those are the individuals that need to be supported, nourished. Those are the individuals that do real well with herbs and with vitamins, with amino acids, specific ones, of course, not just the general. And so those are the ones that don't necessarily do well with at least regular ice baths. They may do well if, for example, when they're on their normal level or on their healthy level, and using the example I gave before, and they run a marathon. Well, yeah, if you've ever if you've ever run a marathon, you feel pretty sore when you're done and you feel real tired. And so at certain moments like that, kind of pinpoint moments like that. Or the example I typically give with patients is, that day when you decided, I'm going to spend 20 minutes and clean out the garage, and 20 minutes turned into 4 hours, and the next day you can't touch your kneecaps. That those types of moments would be ice baths can be beneficial. And so maybe there are instances when people who simply don't benefit at all, or they hate ice. I was born in Pennsylvania near the Poconos, so snow and ice and sleet, and yet I despise it. I love hot, hot weather. And so for people like us, what can we do? Short and sweet of it, black cherry juice. You'll see it either as black cherry juice, black cherry juice concentrate, some version of that. And you could get it typically not only in health food stores, but you could get it in supermarkets. We have a chain here called Publix, which sells it. It is quite flavorful, but it is a whole lot of tart. And so cutting it with water is a very good idea. Otherwise, you sort of need jaws of life to pry your mouth open. But what that will do is flush out a lot of the inflammation. And though you may be sore the next day, you won't be Erase that. Though you may be a little tired the next day if you put in, 4 hours, or the examples that I gave. You won't have that deep achiness, I can't touch my kneecap type of feel to it. And you can get the same type of benefit that people who use the ice baths get without doing the ice baths. As always, any questions about this, any questions about anything, please let me know. I thank you for listening. See you next week.